All right, I want to introduce you to a woman who is experiencing what it's like to raise a child with autism firsthand. Julie Westbrock is both an attorney and the owner of Strike 3 Pitching, a softball training facility in Bloomington. She and her 3-year-old son, Sean, live in Richfield. It's my pleasure to introduce you now to Julie Westbrock.
I'd like to thank the Academy. Sorry, I had to. It's my only chance. My son, Sean, was born in April of '09, so he's now 3.5 years old. Overall, Sean was a pretty good baby. Physically, he was very healthy, which was not a surprise because that kid could eat. The worst health issue he really ever had was a cough and a runny nose. But there were a few things about Sean that concerned me. First, he didn't seem to enjoy being held. Instead, he appeared most content when spending time in his bouncer. Second, well, I hate to admit it, it really took me some time to bond with Sean. Becoming a parent for the first time is, of course, difficult. Your whole life changes in a heartbeat, but your child rewards you for making those changes, first with a smile, and then with a laugh, and eventually with, "And I love you, Mama." But Sean didn't smile until he was 3 months old, and he didn't laugh until 5 months. It was difficult not receiving any positive reinforcement from him that his father and I were doing well as parents. When Sean was 9 months old, we enrolled him in a home daycare with several other children about the same age as Sean. Over the course of the next 9 months to a year, I began to realize that there were some major differences between Sean and the other children. Sean always seemed to want to be in a different room than everyone else. He preferred to be alone. The other children began to speak and also to listen. At 18 months, Sean could hit a ball off a tee with a bat, but he couldn't actually say ball, bat, or tee. He could climb halfway up a softball field backstop, but a blank stare was his only reaction when scolded. He rarely interacted with anyone. He seemed to be in his own little world. My sister-in-law said it best when she said that he appeared to be much more interested in things rather than people. Around the same time, 18 months, Sean started acting out. It felt like the only attention he sought was negative attention. He was difficult to manage at home, and he was even worse at daycare. He needed constant supervision because he was a daredevil and a thrill seeker. It was absolutely exhausting. At his 2-year checkup, I mentioned my concerns to Sean's pediatrician. My concern about Sean's lack of vocabulary, as well as his erratic behavior during the appointment, was enough to compel the doctor to say the dreaded word, autism. The doctor recommended that we first contact the Richfield School District for an evaluation and also mentioned that Fraser is right in our backyard. Richfield ECFE did an evaluation of Sean. The results showed that Sean was developmentally delayed in the areas of communication, social and emotional development, and in the ability to adapt to change. It was determined that he also had some sensory issues that were affecting his behavior. Overall, it was disheartening to know that our child was experiencing some delays developmentally, but it was also very enlightening to learn why he seemed socially isolated and emotionally unavailable. The specialist, Sean's father, and I created a plan and worked with Richfield ECFE over the summer. Sean appeared to be making some progress, but in August of 2011, Sean's behavior became too much for our home daycare provider, and she terminated our contract. Sean's father and I had discussed enrolling Sean in Fraser, but it was his getting kicked out of daycare that gave us the push we needed. Fortunately, and after listening to Diane, amazingly, Fraser had an opening for a toddler. Sean started 1 week later in the Bears room. In the first 2 weeks at Fraser, Sean's behavior changed dramatically. He responded immediately to the organization's structured environment. We still had work to do with his communication and interaction, but it was an amazing improvement. Sean began in speech and occupational therapy twice a week. His speech began to improve quickly, and we had a much better understanding of his sensory needs. In order for him to settle down and focus, his occupational therapist, Rebecca, explained that he occasionally needed a blast of sensory overload. So with a daily diet of swinging, spinning, or bouncing, Sean's ability to concentrate improved and his behavioral issues subsided. Thanks to this understanding of his sensory issues, Sean's vocabulary has grown exponentially. His speech therapist, Amanda, has helped him increase his communication, and as a result, his personality has really emerged. Sean is a jokester and a performer. His teachers now consider him a leader within his class. He is now forming relationships with his family, his teachers, and his peers. I read a book recently called The Gifts of Imperfection by Brené Brown. And while the book is not specifically related to tonight, its theme kept coming back to me as I reflected on the past 3 years and as I wrote out Sean's story. In the book, the author discusses the ideals of courage, compassion, and connection. My experience with autism and with Fraser has given me a much deeper understanding of these words and the realization that each of these ideals has played a very big role in our experience. Anyone who has found him or herself in this or a similar situation knows just how much courage it takes to endure those first few months. At some point, we all had the realization that something was wrong. It takes a lot of courage just to admit that there is a problem. Then it takes a whole lot more to actually do something about it. That first phone call is always the most difficult, especially when many of those around you don't see the problem or don't want to see the problem. During those first 2 years, I kept thinking, Sean should be talking by now. He should want to be around me and other kids by now. But it seemed that every time I expressed my concern, the response was, well, so-and-so didn't talk until he was 3, or my child didn't snuggle until she was 5. And while everyone wanted to reassure me that nothing was wrong, I spent much of his first 2 years feeling like I was crazy. In the end, the recommendation of my pediatrician gave me the courage I needed to make the call and seek some answers. It takes courage to find out the truth. It takes courage to accept the truth. It also takes a whole lot of compassion. Compassion for yourself, for others in your life, and for your child. In January of this year, Fraser did a full autism evaluation of Sean. After finding out he landed on the spectrum, I spent a lot of time wondering what I did wrong. Wondering what I could have changed so that this didn't happen, so that Sean could be a typical child. Being compassionate with myself meant accepting that I did nothing wrong and that I could not have changed the outcome. Being compassionate with Sean means accepting that this is who he is and this is what makes him special. It takes compassion as well as courage to parent in a way that is different than the norm. I try first to parent with compassion, knowing that Sean may not always understand what he's doing or how he's feeling, and his behavior may reflect that. I like to hope that others will be compassionate before being judgmental. But I know that won't always be the case. And that's okay, because I can be compassionate with others knowing that not everyone will understand. I can honestly say that everyone within the Richfield and Fraser programs has been extremely compassionate. That compassion has cultivated a connection with some truly amazing individuals. I instantly felt connected with those who could initially explain to me what was going on with Sean, the people who reassured me that I was not crazy. These individuals not only connected with me, but have also bonded with Sean in a way that has enriched his life. A connection that is both beautiful and moving to behold. Lastly, with Fraser's help, I now have a much deeper connection with Sean. Once the baby that didn't want to be held, and later the detached toddler, Sean is now the boy who constantly seeks interaction, including attention, affection, and approval. Our connection grows with every milestone he reaches emotionally and verbally, especially when he said for the first time, "Mama, I love you." To which I responded, "I love you too, sweetheart. You are so cute." He then corrected me and said, "No, I handsome." These days, it's difficult not to connect with this amazing child. The little boy that loves baseball, breakdancing, watching football with his dad, fishing with his Mimi and Papa, playing Monster with his cousin, and every so often, totally out of the blue, asking for a hug. He is truly my imperfect and yet so very perfect little gift. Thank you.